coming. Yeah, we keep it coming, so it's spiral. Oh yeah, we keep it coming. Yeah, we keep it coming, so it's spiral. And I know I'm gonna keep it 100. Keep it 100. So grateful for the
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Your Guide on Ghana. Right now, we are all still in the global pandemic. COVID-19 has completely altered our lives, and most people are still at home. Some places are easing their lockdowns. Some people are going back to work, but very limited and compared to the way it was before. Social distancing, all different kinds of things have changed the way that we are working, the way that we're living. I know that a lot of people are hungry for content right now, and it seems like, what I have noticed is one of my videos that I did 2 years ago, June 2018, called the 7 Negatives to Know Before Moving to Ghana, is trending. All of a sudden, people are watching that video, and then I have people commenting about the negative things and saying, well, I guess I'm not moving to Ghana. I guess I'm not going to Ghana. So at the time, I did a video with the positives and a video with the negatives. But it seems like right now, everybody wants to hear about the negatives and then make comments about the negatives. One thing you have to understand is Ghana still is a developing country. As much as there's been a lot of publicity and a lot of information about coming to Ghana, coming back to Africa, starting something new, fresh, especially after a year of return, the reality is it is still a developing country, and there are still challenges that exist in countries like Ghana. And I'm just trying to be transparent so that people know what to expect before they make the move. Because some people make naive decisions, not understanding that you can't say you're moving from New York City in the United States, where every day you have every single amenity that you want, and expect that when you move to a developing country that you're going to get the exact same thing. You can't just, it's not like you're transporting it from one place to the other. And the same would apply if you went to live in a place like Pakistan or India, or, there's so many different countries, not just on the continent of Africa, where these challenges are faced. So right now I want to actually talk about, I have my laptop here, so I want to make sure I read things and I don't miss anything as I talk about some of these negatives and how they can actually be positives and be spun into a positive situation. So, or if there's been changes since I made that first video. So with respect to rent, I spoke about how rent is really expensive in Ghana. Now, when it comes to what I was talking about, I generally was speaking about Greater Accra. Now, the reason why I tended to focus on that area was because a lot of people who move to Ghana from abroad, who come from fully developed nations, usually choose to live in metropolitan areas where they can have access to similar things they had access to before they made the move. Because a lot of times people still want the same level of comfort that they had where they were living before. So a lot of people who move from other countries outside of Africa go to Accra. And so if you come to Accra and you're living in some of the places that have, beautiful properties, homes that are like mansions in America or in the UK, Canada, Europe, these homes are beautiful, some of them. And the neighborhoods that they're in have access to a lot of things, and so the rent is a lot higher. And then also a lot of these landlords know that the people living in these areas have a little bit more access to income, so they tend to charge higher rents. So some of these areas, they do charge in US dollars, and the rents are a little bit higher than they would be if you went outside of Greater Accra. So there's a lot of people who are moving to places like, in the central region, in places like Cape Coast, or they're moving to the western region. They're moving to the Ashanti region, to the eastern region. People are moving to different places. They're finding opportunities to create careers, create businesses outside of the metropolitan center of the country so that they can build a new life, build new business, build opportunities, and have a lower cost of living. So if you are willing to live outside of Greater Accra, you will pay less rent. You can literally have a massive house that's only going to cost you like equivalent of maybe $300, $400 a month if you are willing to live outside of Greater Accra. The next thing, power outages. Power outages are still a problem in some areas. When I did that video 2 years ago where I talked about how power goes out so often, now in 2019 to 2020, the power still goes out from time to time. I'm not gonna lie. But it doesn't go out as frequently as it did before. At least not in the areas that I have been in. The power is not going out as badly as it was, as erratically as it was before. But there are still challenges of power going out from time to time. In those cases, if you want to be prepared for power outages, make sure you have a generator. And be prepared to know that there's two different types of generators, one that is on normal gasoline and one that operates on diesel. The one operating on diesel may be less expensive to operate, but it is much louder in sound than the gasoline one. So things to consider. The other thing is, go solar. Find property that has solar panels to power your electricity. Then you won't ever have to worry about it. Because I always say Ghana is like the land of endless sun. Even during rainy season, the sun is shining. And so if you have solar panels, or if you have solar panels installed, yes, it is extremely expensive initially, but in the long run, you will benefit from using solar power. So the positive of a negative experience is going solar, and then you know you'll have an endless supply of energy if you do that. The next thing I talked about the internet. The internet is definitely still a challenge, but I will say, I mean, you don't own the internet companies. We don't have the control over the towers and that type of stuff. So unfortunately, it's not something that you can try to spin into a positive unless you are coming to open up your own company that is supplying internet and you have access to some of the bandwidth to be able to create access for people. But to have better internet, rather than relying on only your phone for internet service, or using your phone as a hotspot, which I had been doing in the past. You can buy a modem, you can get MTN has this thing called TurboNet, but I think that they're phasing it out during this pandemic and getting something else. Having a MiFi, which is a portable internet router that you could carry around, that also gives you better service than if you were relying only on your phone for internet activity. So spending the extra money to get those devices to help support your internet usage, especially if you use a lot of internet, is definitely helpful in you getting better speeds than only relying on your phone. The next thing is, so I don't forget, garbage. I talked about garbage. One of the things that's happened now is because of the pandemic, in Greater Accra anyway, there was a huge exercise where they went around and massively cleaned the city during the time that lockdown was happening and people were at stay-at-home orders so that the virus wasn't spreading, while they were tracing and testing people for COVID-19. The cleanup in the city happened, and then they're saying that they're now going to enforce the laws when people litter in the streets. So hopefully that they will keep their word with that, and we'll see a cleaner Accra, a cleaner Ghana going forward. If you want to be part of the solution to any problems with things like recycling, because recycling is still not a huge thing that's done in this country, perhaps if you come to Ghana, you can be the person who starts another recycling waste company to help pick up things from different locations, from people's homes, whatever it may be. Maybe you could be the one to provide that service, and it will benefit the community, benefit the environment overall. Because as someone said in one of the comments, some of the negatives are definitely business opportunities. Water. I talked about water being an issue, and during this pandemic, the government had promised that water would not be shut off, and that people would get water, and they actually decided to also give people free water where people didn't have to pay their bill for a period of, I think, 3 months, so that it helps support people during a time when people are not making as much money, because some people have lost jobs, their income has reduced significantly because their businesses are closed. And so the access to water has been pretty great overall. However, there have still been some issues with water shortages. In those instances, if you come to Ghana and you live in Ghana, to help to combat that challenge if it ever happens to you, is to have what's called a poly tank. And the poly tank is this big storage tank that people will have like in their backyard that stores water. And then you order water that comes on a water truck and they deliver it to you whatever period of time it is that you have, whether it's weekly or monthly, depending on how much you use water, they can deliver water to you on a regular basis. I'll tell you this, if you do have one of those poly tanks, make sure that you have it cleaned on a regular basis, because there's a lot of people who have those storage tanks and they never clean them. They don't think about the fact that there's bacteria growing inside of those things too. If you just kept refilling, like if you had a water bottle and you keep refilling it and you never clean it, eventually bacteria starts to grow in there. So it's important that you get one of the companies that do cleaning of the poly tanks. So when it empties, if you have someone come and clean it for you and then start fresh and put fresh water in it, then you're good to go. The other thing you could do is you could have a borehole dug in your yard where you have access to your own water coming from the ground. Because in Ghana, there's a lot of water in the groundwater. So if you're able to have a borehole on your property, then you have access to your own water and you're not worrying so much about the Ghana water supply coming through the pipes or your poly tank. But then I know people who have they use Ghana water supply. If it gets turned off, they have a poly tank as their backup. If their poly tank is finished, then they have their borehole that they get water from. So I know people who have all three in the same property. So that's something that you can look into as well. Now, when it comes to business opportunities in Ghana, other business opportunities, one of the things that you could look into is agriculture. A lot of people don't realize how important agriculture is in Ghana. And it's definitely an industry that makes perfect sense to get into. Whether it's in growing certain things, like pineapples or coconuts or cashew nuts, whatever it may be, whether it's that or it's getting into things like fertilizers. It's definitely a business opportunity that people sometimes don't think about. People always think about coming and have a job with a multinational company or a government job or working with an NGO, but you could start your own agricultural business, or you could partner with somebody here who's already in the agricultural business to cultivate something that could be exported on a global scale. Some people don't know that Ghana is the #2 place for exporting cocoa, which is used for chocolate around the world. Yes, Ivory Coast is #1, and then Ghana is #2 for exporting cocoa for the chocolate you eat around the world. So when you're eating that Belgian chocolate or you're eating that Swiss chocolate, it's very likely the cocoa they use to make those chocolate bars or those little chocolate drops came from Ghana or came from Ivory Coast. The two powerhouses when it comes to exporting cocoa around the world. Unfortunately, they don't get paid as much as I think they deserve, but that's a whole nother topic of conversation. So I'm going to talk about another business opportunity in Ghana that has come to light, especially during this pandemic. Delivery services. I can't say that enough. With people staying home, people not going to work as much, people not going to restaurants because the restaurants are closed, the insides where you can sit are closed, so you have to do takeout, delivery services. Some of the delivery services have such bad service that you could come into the game and change it by having excellent service. I have two friends right now who work in the food industry, and both of them have had challenges with the delivery people that they have who are bringing the food to the customers. Some of them are bringing the food like 5-6 hours late. Like if I've ordered lunch and now you're bringing me the food that I ordered for lunch at dinner, what sense does that make? So, a delivery service, you could come to Ghana and start a delivery service and train your people to have like excellent service, and then you could be known as the company with the best delivery services around. Maybe I should do that. No. I'm giving you the idea, you do that. If it's in the cards for you, it's something you could look into doing. Or if you're already here in Ghana, why not start it? So anyway, I just wanted to give you those things, talking about delivery services, agriculture, and then I went through some of those things I talked about that were negatives in the other video, which was talking about, rent, talking about garbage, talking about, the water challenges in Ghana. I also talked about lateness being a negative. I'm sorry, I can't really spin a positive on that because Ghanaians are just always late. My advice is you should still be on time. That's what I try to do. Even though everybody's late, I still try to be on time. If you're on time, you're already above the rest, and you're already noticed because you're always on time and you're always delivering. It's like over-deliver what you've promised. So yeah, that's it for today, and I want to thank you so much for watching another episode of Your Guide on Ghana. Make sure that you don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and that you also put comments down. If you have any questions, any comments, please put them there. I do my best to answer as many of you as possible. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.
I know I'm gonna keep it 100. So grateful for the life I live, grateful for the fishes I see. I'm so grateful for the love I'm receiving. Love are the only thing, only for man I prefer. No need to stress, no need to stress, oh no.